Hello, everyone, and welcome each and every one of you. My name is Monique Chambers, and I am the coordinator for Student Diversity and Inclusion Initiatives with the BASE program. I'd like to take this opportunity just to welcome each and every one of you, staff, faculty, students, the community at large, to our third installment of our Fireside Chats Series. Tonight's special guest is Quentin VerCetty, and I'm excited to have a conversation and to do some learning with every single one of you. I do want to note that tonight's event actually is a joint partnership between the BASE, which stands for the Black Academic Success and Engagement Program, as well as Lakeshore Grounds Interpretive Centre at Humber College. Welcome, everyone. To begin, I'd like to do a land acknowledgement. Humber College is located within the traditional and treaty lands of the Mississaugas of the Credit, known as Etobicoke, the place of the Black elders in the Michisagi language. The region is uniquely situated along Humber River watershed, which historically has provided an integral connection for the Anishinaabe, Haudenosaunee, and Wyandot peoples between the Ontario Lakeshore and the Lake Simcoe, Georgian Bay regions. It is now home to people of numerous nations. Etobicoke continues to provide a vital source of interconnection for all. And I want to take this opportunity just to recognize who I am. I am not an original inhabitant of this land, which makes me a settler. I recognize today that I carry this incredible privilege to engage in conversations around equity and inclusion with people of numerous nations. And so that's me being able to engage, sit at the table and engage in this conversation with each and every one of you. And so I am forever grateful that Etobicoke is continuously providing a vital source of interconnection for each and every one of us. So I want to share some best practices to really enjoy tonight's conversation. This is a live event, and so that means it is being recorded. And we encourage everyone to participate in the live chat box throughout the session. At the end of the Fireside Chats discussion, there will be an open Q&A session. So please keep those questions coming. If you have any questions during the presentation, do not hesitate. Type them in the chat and we will do our best to get to them. Before we introduce our special guests for this evening's conversation, I do want to take this opportunity to introduce our facilitator. Deja Wright is a student of the Art Administration and Cultural Management program and a recent graduate of Carleton University with a BA in Law and Women and Gender Studies. She is passionate about the issues of representation, decolonizing feminism, and Black femininity. Through her educational journey, Deja hopes to both empower and inspire others by encouraging those around her to challenge their unconscious biases and to diversify their perspectives. Please take this opportunity to welcome Deja Wright.
Hi, thank you, Monique, for that lovely introduction. So now I'm going to go ahead and introduce our lovely panelists. Winner of the 2020 Joshua Glover Memorial Competition, Quentin VerCetty is a multi-award-winning, multidisciplinary visual griot, artpreneur, educator, artivist, and an ever-growing interstellar tree. With a Bachelor in Fine Arts from OCAD University and a Master's in Art Education from Concordia University, he's one of the world's leading Afrofuturist artographers. Through his scholarly work, he has coined the terms Sankofanology and Rastafuturism, while creatively he exhibits imaginative futures of Blackness representation. VerCetty is the co-editor of Canada's first Afrofuturism art anthology, Cosmic Underground Northside, an incantation of Black Canadian speculative discourse and interstandings, which features work from over 100 Black Canadians. Through his work, he hopes to engage minds, inspire hearts, and help to make the world a better place, not only for today, but for many tomorrows to come. Thank you, Quentin, for being with us today. Thank you for joining us on our Fireside Chat. Look at your background. Look at you all creative out. It's nice to meet you. How are you doing? Oh, you're muted.
I am blessed and super excited to be here. And thank you once again to all the partners and everyone involved for having me here.
It's no problem. Where are you joining us from?
So I'm currently in Rexdale,
Okay.
speaking to y'all from Indigenous lands, but I also would like to welcome in all of our ancestors, as I do speak from the past, present, and future as well.
Okay, that's great. Thank you. I know you prepared a presentation for us.
Yeah, I do have a little something. It coincides with some of the questions that you might have.
Okay,
So
cool. Did you want to start with that first?
Yeah, absolutely, I can do that.
Okay, no problem.
So greetings to everyone. Feel free, if you have any questions, if there's any art pieces that you like, feel free to comment on them, or just let me know what you like or what you don't like, even if you don't like it, express yourself. So again, I'm Quentin VerCetty, and we're going to have our little reasoning as I understand it, a little here and there sharing. But I want to just give everyone a even playing ground to kind of get familiar with my work. I know one of the first things people wonder is like, what is my work about, and what do I do per se? Because there's a couple terms that was thrown out there in my biography that you're like, huh, who, what? So I work in the realm of Afrofuturism, and I personally don't start my conversation of Afrofuturism around Mark Derry. I specifically start with Sun Ra, as to me personally, this is a true essence of what Afrofuturism is about. So Mark Derry kind of scratched the surface and wasn't really truly understanding, as you like to say. He didn't really have a full comprehension of what Afrofuturism is meant to do. And so the roots of Afrofuturism, as it relates to the Ethiopian or Alkebulan, these are the indigenous names of Africa, it's about cosmology and metaphysics. So this idea of the outer space is about exploring the spiritual unknown, And so Sun Ra and June Tyson, those were two people who I often look to when I speak about Afrofuturism, because that started in the 1950s, but they really looked at how Afrofuturism been an ancient practice of African ancestors, all the way down to ancient Kemet, to ancient Congo, to the ancient Nook people of Nigeria and Benin Empire. So we're talking about like 5000 BC, people looking into the future, the Dogons, etc., etc. So this is where my work starts. And so my definition of Afrofuturism is a Pan-African frequency that has manifested in the forms of being an arts movement, praxis, methodology, and the ways of thinking about the creative ways that all living things can heal and continue to exist, evolve, or fractal from an Afrocentric lens. And those creative ways can be precise, hyper-theoretical, science fiction, speculative, fantasy, or prophetic. So I wanted to redefine Afrofuturism because it keeps evolving, but the essence of it sometimes gets missed, And so this definition speaks to indigenous futurism. It speaks to Latinx futurism, all the different type of futurisms that kind of branched out from the tree that Afrofuturism came from. And so there's 5 dimensions of Afrofuturism. The first one is metaphysics. So again, the spiritual element, or the energetic element, or synergistic element. The second one is aesthetics. So how are you identifying the futuristic aspect in the work that you're seeing, or whatever it is that you're experiencing, because it's not always art. The theoretical and applied science. So like, what are the things that might be inventive, that might relate to theories around science or applied science? So that's, that's everything from how we live, So for me, coming from a Rastafari background, I think about farming, and how taking care of the land. We can't exist as human beings without land, So it's like taking care of a land can be seen as Afrofuturistic if you're doing it from an Afrocentric standpoint. And then it relates to social sciences. So how does it apply to the world around us? And last but not least, the fifth dimension, is what we're doing right now. It's programmatic spaces, So how are we teaching people and engaging people to think about their relations to the future? And Dr. Ronaldo says, in the 21st century, the former definition, he's speaking about Mark Derry, is no longer bound to its original definition as a term once dealing with cultural aesthetics and digital divide, but has been brought in to be known as a philosophy of science, metaphysics, and geopolitics. So the main element within my work, and this is now to bring everyone up to speed, is a term called Sankofanology. But before I speak about Sankofanology, my interest in Afrofuturism came out of becoming conscious that myself and other Black youth in my hood, which is Rexdale, where I'm from, couldn't see our lives beyond the next day. And that's because we were living on a day-to-day basis. There are so many allures for us to get caught up in that we couldn't see beyond whatever we're doing in this moment. If it's smoking, folks couldn't see beyond smoking the next blunt. If it's playing basketball, some folks can't even plan beyond the next game. It's just because we were living in a state of fear, but in a state of survival, in my neighborhood, that we just didn't see a future for ourselves. So my interest came out of my grandfather telling me about stories about, Jamaica, and telling me stories about the places he traveled to because he'd been to Europe and all these different things. Whereas at that time, my grandfather passed away when I was 16. And at the time, I only knew Jamaica. I only knew Jamaica and Rexdale. Like, I'd never been to downtown. So my understanding, my worldview was very skewed, and I didn't understand that I can be more than just a survivor, that I could strive. And so Afrofuturism kind of opened me up to that world. And the roots of my visual work came out of being inspired by a film called The Fifth Element. I had a crush on the alien in The Fifth Element. She's like the alien with the dreads. And so that actually inspired my work today, like this art piece that I made in the background. And also Octavia Butler's parable books. So coming across those two elements really blew my mind, especially The Fifth Element specifically, mainly because if you go back to the film, it's on Netflix actually. If you go back to the film, the whole basis of it is focus on Africa. That's the first time you see a galactic president, which was a Black man. This is before Obama. He's not even the president of a country. Man's the president of a galaxy. Crazy. And then there's all these various different type of Black characters. But the thing I loved about it was all the accents. There were so many different accents in that movie. Chris Tucker was one of them. Then you had the British guy. Then you had the Jamaican guy who's like talking patois. And I was like, oh my gosh, like it just blew my mind to see this type of representation in the future. And so this leads to my the main philosophy of my work, which is Sankofanology. And that term comes from West Africa, from a word called Sankofa. And Sankofa is meant to demonstrate that time does not exist on a singular dimension, but rather that African, past, present, or future. And actually, I will switch the word African for Ethiopian or Alkabalan, again, indigenous words for the continent. So the Ethiopian past, present, and future are all interconnected and overlaps. And within that context, there's an overstanding. So there's this general knowledge that certain African, Ethiopian elements are universal, like the importance of patterns, whether it's art and design, music and fashion, or language or body movement. So what that means is it relates to this symbol from West Africa called the Sankofa symbol. And there's two symbols. One is represented as a bird, and the other one is actually the original design of the heart symbol. And so the bird represents a physical aspect of learning from the past. So for me, like I said, I learned from my grandfather. My grandfather represents the past, but he was informing me in the present so I could take the lessons he was giving me for the future. So that's a physical lesson. So he represents that Sankofa bird, and in the mouth of the bird is his egg, right? So the egg will be me. But then there's a dua. Dua then represents a spiritual learning, the metaphysical learning, where you learn from within yourself, when you learn from within whatever religious background you might be, but where you learn from the place that you can't see, that intangible, unexplainable, supernatural place within you, within all of our consciousness. And when you take that learning from inside of you, whether it's from meditating, praying, whatever, or from art, dancing, whatever, you take that and you to action. So that's a physical. That's a synergistic. So that's the energy transfer of the past, present, and future being connected. And so the best way I can explain Sankofanology is like it's kind of like the internet, Like I could be I can be in Africa right now in a whole different time zone, and then you, Deja, is like in Canada, and we're in two different time zones, but on the internet, we're in the same time space, we're in the same dimension. There's no time, and so this is kind of like how the synergy works within Afrofuturism. This is how we believe the past, present, and future connects, and this is actually how the Dogon explains how they were able to map out Sirius B, the star system, thousands of years before any of the Europeans, and to accuracy, like to the T, like, and they didn't have telescopes or anything like that, but they were saying that it's because they were tapped into a higher source that allowed them to understand the constellations and understand that they came from the stars. So all those things inform my work, and I hope that kind of helps guide some of the conversation that we're going to have today.
Listen, the first thing I want to say is I don't know if you've ever thought about going into teaching, but I could literally sit here and listen to you talk for forever. You know what you're talking about. You know your stuff and you're passionate about it, and it shows.
Appreciate it.
Thank you for that. Thank you for that so much. One thing that I did want to point out, I love that you started with the definition, because I feel like sometimes there's this assumption that everybody starts on the same page with words, and what it means to me could be completely different from what it means to everybody else. So thank you for defining that.
Absolutely.
And I just wanted to know, so you're very educated. I see you have a lot of educational experience, and you talked a lot about kind of representation and how you didn't know, or growing up, you and your peers, you weren't able to see the next phase of your life. You didn't have that motivation. There wasn't that representation. So is that something that kind of drew you towards the path of art? Like, what got you set on this journey?
Yeah, I was kind of always artistically inclined, and unfortunately, like, I just saw a lot of craziness happening. I grew up in the 90s in Rexdale, where this is like the beginning of the crack epidemic. This is the beginning of like a lot of gangsterism coming in, like a lot of gangs and stuff like that. So I just saw a lot of people die. Like I've seen people die in real life, and art became that therapy for me to make sense of just a madness that I was seeing. Just I had a friend who was just like literally just chilling in the park, and a stray bullet hit him. And just trying to make sense of life, and on a lot of these unfortunate circumstances. And so instead of thinking about like, oh, there's no hope for tomorrow, we were just like literally just living for today. But then feeling art allowed me to feel connected to purpose, and also gave me a way to develop emotional intelligence, but then on top of that, develop a way to cope with grieving, cope with feeling powerless, cope with all these different things that were larger than me, and so that's kind of how I got started into art.
Okay, I dig that. I feel that. So I know your style is very different. You're very unique. You don't have kind of like the traditional art stream, I guess you can kind of say. What kind of got you into Afrofuturism? Is it something that you learned about, or did you take your emotion and research about, like, the possible potentials or the art streams that you'd be interested in? How did you get started with that?
Yeah, great question. So essentially I dropped out of high school. And when I dropped out of high school, I was kind of just trying to find myself. And then fast forward, I got involved in like as an adult, I re-enrolled because I was just like, let me just get my high school diploma. And essentially I got into a program that was a fast track program that led me to the Remix Project. And the Remix Project is a youth organization that helped at-risk youth or youth from the priority neighborhoods, and essentially connected them with mentorships or just helped them to achieve some of their goals. And so I really wanted to actually create a clothing business. I wanted to create designs for clothing, because a lot of people were asking me to do graphic design stuff, and it was funny because I was doing a lot of my graphic design stuff on Microsoft Paint, so it was just really guerrilla style, but I would just spend a lot of time just doing it, and it looked refined. Like to the point where I was recreating like Nike commercials, like Nike advertisements and stuff in Microsoft Paint, and so yeah, so in Remix Project I got connected through Amanda Pierce, who, shout out to Amanda Pierce, connected to me to a mentor named Danilo McCallum, who became like my big brother even to this day, and he mentored me but he's the one that kind of like was like, yo, your work is Afrofuturistic, yo. And I was like, what? Afro woo, ha ha ha. You know, I was like, yo, break that down for me. And he just like introduced me to Octavia Butler. And so once I started reading Octavia Butler's books, I was like, oh snap, my work is this, like, you know. And then it also made me look back at some of the things I was inspired by. So like when I saw The Fifth Element, I didn't know why I was so enticed by it, you know what I mean, until later on. And I was just like, oh, okay, this makes sense why I love this movie. I can quote lines from this movie, etc., etc. Like where I was dreaming about this alien and you know all these different things. So yeah, it just got through mentorship. That's kind of how I got involved in that, and then through that mentorship, it just really I love learning about new things, you know, and so that kind of led me into just learning about new ways I can creatively express myself. That was cost efficient, but also allowing me to do it quickly because I have so many ideas and even though I started off painting and doing murals, it just wasn't fast enough for me essentially.
Okay, I get that. Painting takes a lot of time.
Yeah.
So
And money
a
and money.
lot of time
Painting
and
cheap.
money and patience and all of that other good stuff. So you talked a little bit about Afrofuturism, but I don't think you delved into Raster Futurism. So can you kind of explain a little bit about what that means and the difference?
Yeah, so Raster Futurism is essentially a definition that I coined as well, um, where it's about how the principles in Rastafari ideology and practice and liberty is being continued in society. So this is everything from, I don't smoke personally, but you know, this is everything from the cultivation of hemp and cannabis, you know, and obviously cannabis and hemp is not only for smoking, also you can make it for clothing. In fact, hemp is what's used to make canvas for artists, for all different things, canvas bag, canvas clothing, etc., etc. That's everything from meditation. This is everything from just recognizing how everything is interconnected. So in Rastafari ideology, they use the term einity, so how everything is united and is one. So essentially, there's these different elements that we see that society is now starting to adopt, but it's kind of like shooing away the the connection aspect, the spiritual aspect. And so Raster Futurism is kind of like looking back at how that part in everything that we do is important and how that needs to carry on into the future and how it will carry on in the future, you know? So I think about yoga, for example, you know, oftentimes when we think about yoga, we think of like, no offense to anyone, but you know, we think of white women in tights, uh, and not think about how actually yoga originates in Africa and then traveled to India and then became what it is, what we know now. You know, so when you look at ancient Egypt, Kemet, and ancient Kush, and even the Abyssinians, we see that they actually practice a lot of the early forms of yoga that then got adopted into Indian culture through trade, right? So through the spice trade, and so we see these things being marketed massively and kind of like not really given much reserve to. And so Rasta Futurism is kind of like looking back at like, okay, yo, this is good for your health, but also is more importantly good for your spirit, which
Yeah.
all is connected.
I think that I'm Jamaican too, by the way. I'm not well versed on the Rasta culture, so I appreciate the education that you're bestowing on me. You know, I gotta take it when I can get it, right?
And I just want one more thing I want to add is like, so one of the things I identify for Rasta Futurism is that you don't have to be identifying as a Rastafari to engage in Rasta Futurism.
Okay.
So that's one of the things I want to point out.
Okay. I just have a question because you're well versed on kind of your history and you seem well knowledgeable about multiple cultures and you know you've been able to find your niche and your passion, but how is what you know now about just like art, life and culture in comparison to what you knew when you were going through your educational journey? So like, did you learn anything about kind of like, just to kind of like generalize Black art itself through your experience at like OCAD or Concordia?
Mm-hmm. Nah, nah. All that was self-education, you know. So, uh, you know, it's interesting because my grandfather often told me like, "Yo, self-education is the greatest education," you know. And and I didn't realize that's what school was about. Like I only went to OCAD. So let me just tell y'all this story. I only went to OCAD because when I was doing the fast track program, I didn't really realize I was getting good marks. It didn't dawn on me that I was getting good marks. So when I was told I was on the honor roll, I was like, oh, how am I on the honor roll? Like I'm just trying to do what I need to do to get out. So when it came to graduating, on the graduation day, I was shocked when they gave me the Governor's General Award.
Okay.
And so I was like, oh snap, I got the Governor's General Award. Okay, cool. But then I opened it up and saw that I had a big fat check. And I was like, what? And so then the note with the money said it's for education. And I was like, wait, so I can't just go buy a car? I can't just like go just, put this as a down payment to a house? I have to go to school? I was like, I did this to get out of school and not to go back in school. So anyways, but then I got a scholarship to go to OCAD. I got an offer for OCAD, and then kind of set this whole thing in motion. And so at OCAD, I was thinking like, yo, they're gonna teach me about art. They're gonna teach me how to be an artist. They're gonna teach me all these different things, not realizing that that is self-directed. Like you have to kind of have an idea of what you want to learn, but more importantly, you have to have an idea of like what you're doing in that place. You know what I mean? So you have to recognize the institution is a tool and not the ends to the means. And so by the time I got to do my master's, that's when I realized how to kind of navigate the space a little bit better. So it's like, all right, yo, professor, this is what I want to learn. Can you help me? And so also I didn't realize like it's all about building a relationship, right? So I just thought like every professor was just knew everything, and not like, oh, professors specialize in this and professors specialize in that. So once I learned that towards the end of my year at OCAD, that's when I was like, okay, yo, none of y'all gonna teach me how to paint black skin. You know what I mean? None of y'all gonna tell me black skin can't just be mixed with red and blue to get brown. Like, nah, like you have to think about building layers, and that the fact that black skin is translucent. So then I have to have, you know what I mean? No one's gonna tell me that unless I then do the research and then meet other artists and then build those type of things. So so everything that came out of the school was, or the most that came out of my school and my academic experience was learning how to use what the tools the school had, and the school as a tool to enhance what I wanted to actually achieve outside of the school.
And did you think the kind of the lack of representation was a motivator for you, or how did you, like, was it helpful to kind of, fueling your hunger for knowledge, or fueling you to learn what they couldn't teach you, or was it something that kind of like held you back and kind of, killed your motivation? How did you interpret that?
I mean, I've always been self-driven. So once my grandfather passed away, I was kind of like, my mindset was like, yo, it's just me against the world, like on some Tupac type of thing, So because my grandfather was someone who like I kind of like actively went to get advice and get perspective, et cetera, et cetera. So like in my head, once he was gone, I was just like, yo, there's no one who can tell me things about me for me better than he did, because in my mind I was just like, yo, he came, he saw and conquered in a way, and so there's an African proverb that says every time an elder passes away, it's like a library burns down, and so that really resonated. So essentially, once he passed away, I was just like, yo, I have to build my own library. I have to become my own library, and so this is where now I started to really tap into the Afrofuturism aspect, because then I was like, okay, yo, even though he's physically not here, he's spiritually still with me, and his teaching still a compass for me. So it was a motivator really, because even though I recognize that like in the school system, I'm not going to see people who look like me, or I'm not going to see professors talk about artists who come from where I came from. It was like, okay, boom, this is now an opportunity for me to teach y'all, So it was definitely a motivator. And also it's just like, yeah, it was really just a big like fu to the institution, you know. Because I'm like, oh, I knew you guys were racist. Oh, I knew it. I knew it. You know, like it was crazy when I was talking about like the founders of OCAD
Mm-hmm.
being slave owners, and they're like, no, they weren't. They were abolitionists, and I was like,
Wow.
that's not what the document says. You know, so it was just an interesting trip. Just again being self-educated, and then just realizing like, okay, things are the way they are because y'all didn't educate yourself,
Mm-hmm.
you know, on how to actually um, be inclusive.
Okay, I had no idea that the owners of OCAD owned
I mean,
slaves. Like,
every, I mean, truth be told, almost every university in Toronto, if not Canada, was founded by slave owners. Ryerson, U of T, York, the list goes on.
which is fair. It makes sense. So, knowing all of this, what was the defining moment that launched you onto the path of being a visual artivist, an arts activist?
Yeah. There was no one thing, to
Mm.
be honest, but I would say the main thing was when I was doing. So I was involved in a lot of streets illegal activities,
Mm-hmm.
to say it in a nice way, and I got in a lot of trouble because I used to love to fight because
Mm-hmm.
I was just good at fighting, and I was just strong for my size. Like, you know, I don't think I'm that strong now, but like at like 15, 16, I was abnormally strong. So I was a bully, really. I was just picking fights on like the biggest guy just to like, you know, just hormones raging. And I just got in a lot of issues with a lot of guys. And you know, with the whole setup of things, there was like this whole territorial aspect within the streets of like, oh, if you're from this neighborhood, you don't go to this neighborhood. If you're from this neighborhood, you don't go to this neighborhood. And there was a guy who I got in a fight with in Lawrence Heights. It was a really bad fight, and I had no business fighting this guy. But it's just that he looked at me the wrong way, and I was like, oh, what up? And I was there to see a girl, and I had no business starting issues with someone where I don't live, you know,
Mm-hmm.
much less just because you're looking at me. It's just the stupidest, most toxic masculinity thing you can ever think of. But anyways, this guy told me he's gonna shoot me, he's gonna kill my family. Da, 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 da. He starts stalking me, all these things. He went to jail actually for killing someone. Gets out of jail, and then says he still wants to kill me. And this is like 6 years later. And I just so happened to be doing a mural in Lawrence Heights, not thinking anything of it. I was doing a mural in Lawrence Heights, working with a bunch of youth, and he rolls up. Yo, you remember me? And he's like, yo, you mentored my nephew, and my nephew became a full-time artist and got out the game.
Oh.
And I was like, okay. So I'm like not thinking anything of it. He's like, yo, I've been trying to get all my family out of this, ever since I got out of prison.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you know, I've been trying to work hard to make sure none of my other family members get involved in the game. And you provided a way out for some of them, you know? And I was like, okay. And he's like, yo, but also the fact that you're doing this in my community, I respect that.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, okay. You know, I'm just like, where's this going?
Yeah.
And so he's like, yo, anything y'all need, just let me know. He brought us water, he brought us food, and I'm just like, yo, what? And then it was crazy because also I didn't know the two like blocks in that neighborhood were kind of beefing, as the term is. And for those who may not know, beefing is just like people who have an issue with each other. And the term that they use is it's an on-site thing. So it's like if they see each other, it's gonna be an issue.
Yeah.
And I was unaware of this. And the youth who I had involved in the mural were from both sides. And so for the mural unveiling, because of the mural, I had respect from both sides of the OGs because I had their younger siblings and younger family members.
Mm-hmm.
They kind of made a peace treaty from that. Like, you know what I mean? Like they decided to like put their beef aside. You know, and so it made me realize the power of art to create social change and also to create peace. And so for me, I was like, shoot, there's no way for me to go back. You know what I mean? There's nothing, like, I just couldn't see how I could, like, live not doing that. Like, you know what I mean? Live not trying to make the world a better place, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Another quick story is the mural that I did at Yorkdale. There was a elderly gentleman. His name is Felix. I love telling the story, and it always gets me emotional. So, pardon me if I cry. But while I was making the mural, I was like, your representation is important, and so I wanted to make sure the mural was transgenerational. Like, it had young people and elderly, and so I was like, yo, this mural right now is missing an elderly gentleman, like, you know, someone from that neighborhood. And as I said it, I swear, promise you, as I said it, I turned around. This man who looked like he came out of the Soul Disney movie, like a jazz, like super jazzy, like he had the straps, he had the hat, and he was just walking with a bounce. And he's like, just walking, and I was like, oh my God, this is him. And so I stopped him, like, yo, sir, I really love your swag. Are you from this community? And he's like, yeah, I've been living here for 50 years, seen it change. And he's giving me all these stories, and he's laughing and talking about barbecues and stuff. And I'm like, yo, sir, can I take your picture?
Mm-hmm.
No, sorry, he was about to walk away. Sorry, he was about to walk away, and then he stopped, and he was about to light a cigarette, and I was like, yo, Q, ask him for his picture. So I was like, yo, sir, can I take your picture? And he's like, oh, yeah, sure, why not? He's like, you think I dressed this good for no reason? Of course you can. So he takes a picture, and he starts posing, and then everyone starts talking to him. Like, everyone doing the mural starts talking to him. So let me just shorten this story. So long story short, he comes to the unveiling of, like, so he started visiting us, like, every day, every other day, every couple of days. And then for like a span of time, we didn't see him, right? Like, this mural took like a month to do. So at the opening of the unveiling of the mural, he comes with his grandkids. And they said to me, yo, Quentin, we gotta thank you. You saved our grandfather's life. And I was like, what are you talking about? They're like, yo, that day that you met him, he was diagnosed with lung cancer. And the doctor told him that the next cigarette you smoke can kill you. And you stopped him from smoking that cigarette. And ever since that day, he never smoked again. And I was like, yo, I was like, oh my God.
Wow.
You know, and I cried. Because I was just like, yo, it's like, and so, oh yeah, so they also said to me, like, yo, that mural was his daily walk.
Oh.
And so that was his way of starting to, like, build back up his health and start to be more healthy.
Mm-hmm.
And so every day when he went to go see us and bring us stuff, it was him exercising. And so it essentially, they're like, yo, you probably saved his life to see his grandkids for a longer time and spend more time with them. And I was like, yo, wow. So anyways, all that to say, yeah, ever since then, I just couldn't turn back.
That's a powerful story. That's a really powerful story. So when you hear, how does it feel to receive, like, compliments like that, and to know that, you know, your art means something to so much different people? Is that your goal? Like, what's your main goal? Like, what emotion do you want to pull from your audience?
Yeah, great question. I would say my aim with the work is for people to just think about how they can be better people in this world, you know? And then also think about how we all have a contribution that we can make, you know? And that's one of the things I would say I learned from being in the academic world, you know?
Mm-hmm.
It kind of blew my mind, this idea of plagiarism, you know? When you think about it. Because that means every single person has to make an original paper.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, yo, how is it possible that everyone has to make an original paper? And I'm like, because everyone has something unique to offer. Mm-hmm. Everyone has something unique to say. So there's no reason for you to plagiarize, because what you have to say in your perspective is completely unique. And so really what I want people to, when they see my work, is to think about what is the unique thing I have within me in whatever shape or form to bring into the future. You know, I want people to think about themselves as ancestors and think about, like, their connection, their identity to all things around them. You know, you're not just here just to be here, you know. And so that's what I really want people to take away from my work.
Okay, I appreciate that. So I'm just gonna slowly transition over to the beautiful piece that you were selected to do by the City of Toronto. So you were selected to do a piece on Joshua Glover. Can you tell me a little bit about that project? How did you hear about it? How did you learn about him?
Yeah, so my mom, like, I'm pretty sure if you're Jamaican, you know about these things. So back in the day, there was like these books called Britannia encyclopedias, and they have like different volumes from A to Z, and like a lot of like wannabe bougie. I call my mama wannabe bougie. She wannabe bougie. They will have this whole bookcase of these encyclopedia books, or just maybe a couple volumes of the book. And so, as punishment, my mom would make me read these books, like read things from these books. And so one day she told me to look up Joshua Glover because she heard about him at some Black History Month event a long time ago, and she just knew that he was a Black man from the neighborhood. And she's like, as your punishment, you gotta tell me everything about Joshua Glover before I come back home from work. So I'm talking about pre-internet. Well, not pre-internet, but I'm talking about like early internet days where dial-up, the troubles of dial-up. Listen, Zoom could not be possible with dial-up. That's just what people know. The plight of the early 90s. But anyways, so my dial-up was not able to like look this man up. So I had to go through Britannia encyclopedias and go to the library all before my mom came back home so I don't get beatings. I'm glad that beatings don't happen anymore, but also I'm too old to get beatings, but still.
Never too old, okay? Never too old.
I know, right? But that's besides the point. The point is, I looked him up and I was like, oh, fascinated by this gentleman who lived in the area. But then what struck me about him was I was just like, yo, it's odd. It's odd because I was like, there's nothing in my mind at the time. I was like, there's nothing extraordinary about him. But then now older and then being reintroduced to him, I was like, yo, what made Joshua Glover extraordinary is not his story per se, but his character. Because there's something about his character that made people want to document who he was. Because there were many runaway slaves, enslaved people during that time period. You know, I learned about Sir Levi Barton, who also worked with Joshua Glover at the Montgomery Inn. So it was like something about his character, and it was also written about the type of upright man that he was, and the type of characteristics that he had, and traits that he had. And I was like, yo, that's what made people remember him, and that's what made him so important. And so yeah, I'm blessed to be able to tell his story, especially coming from the same region that I'm from.
Can you walk us a little bit through your design and your inspiration and how you chose to kind of build that?
Yeah, absolutely. So I didn't want to just do another representation of Joshua Glover. Even though there's not much real life images of him. There's one illustration and a couple of etchings, but there's a couple descriptions about him when he ran away, his slave bill. And then there's a couple descriptions about him. So I took those things and I was like, yo, how can I make this something that speaks beyond just Joshua Glover's story, in terms of him being someone who was an enslaved African that ran away. And so I had a dream, and Joshua Glover appeared to me in the dream, and essentially he walked through a portal. And this is what he was doing. He was walking through the portal, and he was kind of like a superhero. He was like, and he like stepped through the portal, and he's like, he didn't even say nothing. He just looked, and I was like, yo, what is he looking at? And then I was just like, then I woke up, and I was like, oh snap, this is it. And then I started to create it, and so and then as I started to create the art piece, I kind of got inspired to like tell his story in a unique way. So what you're seeing is a speculative. So a metaphoric way of telling his life story. So I didn't want, because I recognize like a lot of monuments just tell the person story based on like maybe a famous image of them, or maybe based on just like one point in their life. And I was like, nah, like I need to tell that this man is a man whose life went through many transitions, even until the day he died. You know, he wasn't just like defined by his circumstances. But then I realized it was a mirror for my own life, you know, of how I went through so many transitions as I learned more about myself. And so one of the aspects I put in the art piece was this cyborg arm. John Jennings talks about how the black body in America was seen as a robot, as a machine, and that's what slavery is. It's dehumanizing someone to a robot. It's dehumanizing someone to think of them as property, as like, the early smartphone, if you think about it. And so, or the early Android, because I'm an Android user, not an iPhone, but that's neither here or there. What you're seeing is Joshua Glover reclaiming his humanity, so you see these wormy like skins, and so I was thinking about like his arms transforming into flesh, or he's regaining his flesh, and then this tattered shirt is meant to represent, him running away from St. Louis, Missouri, to Wisconsin, and then ending up in Ontario. So this dandy suit is actually in reference to the suit that he actually had, that he wore while he worked at the Montgomery Inn. And it also is just in reference to like that time period, the Victorian time period. But then I wanted to add some more aspects of his story into it, so people can kind of like know more about him. So, like I said, he was a really well-read person. So he taught himself how to read and write, where he was able to forge his own papers. So this could be either his wanted papers, he's crushing it in his hands, or it can represent his freedom papers, like he's clutching his freedom, And then these books are like a combination of his journals, his ledger, however you want to see that, But also, Joshua Glover was a hardworking man, right? So he used to study how to create things and then create it. So he used to like build things across Etobicoke for other people, and he also like was known for being a gardener and a farmer as well. So I wanted to put flowers, and I didn't want to put any flower. So I put flowers to represent the different regions that he came from and the different points in his transition. So the white hawthorn blossom is the state flower from Missouri, which is where he was enslaved. The common blue violet is representing of the state of Wisconsin, and then the white trillium, obviously Ontario, which is where he resided and for the rest of his life. And then on the top of his top hat, I put a hibiscus flower. As you know, of Jamaican descent, we call hibiscus sorrel. And but in general, hibiscus flowers is a Pan-African plant. You find it all throughout the Caribbean. You find it throughout Africa, in so many different ways. And you can eat it, you can cook it, and you can also drink it. And it's known for its healing abilities, but also for its spiritual connection. The idea that it keeps you grounded, and it just keeps you alert, and just all these different aspects, And so for me, I was like, let me put a hibiscus flower in his hat to say that he always had this idea of being connected to something higher than himself, that he is not a slave, he's an enslaved African, and that was important for me to put and emphasize on, because at the end of the day, it's about the imagination, and the greatest freedom is when you can imagine yourself to be whatever you want to be. And so Joshua Glover's freedom occurred once he, in his imagination, could see himself being free. When he imagined himself more than his circumstances, that's when he realized that he can do it. That's when he freed himself, really. And so for me, again, the parallel with my story is like, once I was able to imagine a future for myself, I started to depict it. And I started to act on it, and so that's kind of, again, me just embedding these ideas into my work. And so that's the Joshua Glover piece.
No, that's very well thought out. I love how everything that's on the statue itself is there for a reason. There's nothing that's just there just because, and you've thought literally every little piece of that out. And I also love how reflective the pieces of yourself. You can tell that it's your work in every piece of work that you create. You leave a little bit of yourself behind, right? So it's definitely well reflected of you. I really like it. I appreciate that and all of the thought that went into that. So knowing how well designed and well thought out the statue is and how much effort you put into it, what kind of conversations are you hoping that this piece sparks within the community? What are you trying to invoke?
Yeah, absolutely. So, first and foremost, more education around Black contribution in Canada. So my undergrad at OCAD, it shifted from just looking at art, but then also looking at art representation. And I was really interested in how much art pieces exist permanently in the Canadian landscape. First, it started in Toronto, and then once I learned that there was none, I was like, okay, well, let me look at Ontario. And I was like, oh, what do you mean? There's only like 3, 4 statues of people of African descent in Ontario? How is this possible? And then I looked beyond Ontario and then across Canada, and I've been able to find 17 different statues. And this might sound like a lot to someone, but in Queen's Park alone, there's at least 20 monuments of monuments dedicated to people of European descent in Queen's Park alone. We're not even talking about Parliament Hill, which has like about 30. We're not even talking about like different places. Just in Toronto alone. So the fact that this is going to be the first, I hope the main conversation is thinking about this not being the last and only, because there's so many other great great Torontonians, not just folks from Ontario that resides in Toronto, that made a huge contribution to why Toronto is the way Toronto is, being the multicultural city that it is. We can start off with Jean Augustine. We can start off with Michael Jean. We can start with Lincoln M. Alexander. So all these people, which unfortunately may not be a household name to a lot of Canadians, I hope they become that conversational starter. Like Joshua Glover was a simple man, and we're paying homage to him, but there's so many more people that we need to pay homage to.
Fair facts. Not enough acknowledgement, representation. I completely agree with that. And I know that you've had work exhibited all around the world. You have pieces in a lot of different places. So how does it feel to, have a piece that's of such importance built in your own community?
Honored, super humbled, super honored, super grateful. I'm still trying to process the feeling. I don't think I'll know truly how to feel, because like I have a 3D print of the monument,
Wow.
and I'm like, oh, this is cool. Like, seeing it, I was like, oh, this is cool. Da, 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 da. But then to think like this is gonna be bigger than me, not just like physically, but also like literally, because it's gonna like the bronze is meant to last for 500 years. So I'm like, yo, this is surreal. You know what I mean? So I don't know. I still don't know how to process that feeling. No, I don't think I need to. I just think I need to just continue to be grateful and keep creating. I want to also add, my true hope is to make a collection of monuments for Black women, because there is not enough representation of the amazing trailblazing women of Black women of Canada, and so that's what I hope to do one day soon.
Do you have any specific women on the forefront of that, or anybody?
Oh yeah, my list is long. I mean, I would start with Jean Augustine. Not only because I know her personally, but I just think that we don't give her enough credit, and we don't. Canada has done a really crappy job to honor this woman while she's alive, and so I would hope to make a statue or some type of tribute to her while she can enjoy it. So that's the number one woman on my list.
Okay. And just to big her up and big up yourself a little bit, can you give a little bit of her background and just kind of speak of, the importance that she holds to you and the connection there?
Yeah. So Jean Augustine, or the Honorable Dr. Jean Augustine, was one of the first Black, person of color in Parliament, in the House of Commons. She also helped to be instrumental in creating Black History Month being recognized in the 1990s. But she also helped to create a lot of immigration acts or possibilities and opportunities for newly immigrants. So not just Black folk, but immigrants across the world who came to Canada. She also created like so many different funding opportunities and housing opportunities for these immigrants. She also like just really reshaped education board to be more diverse and inclusive. So again, when we think about multiculturalism, it's like, yo, she played such a huge role in all of that, and she's still a huge advocate for people of color, even to this day. So again, it's just like, she's someone that I feel like we need to, give her flowers while she can enjoy them.
Okay, I appreciate that. Thank you for that good piece of information, because that personally, I can honestly say that's not something I've never heard of her before. I'm not well informed. So I do appreciate that. I think representation is very important. And I think people being active and looking for representation, and just having that on the forefront, and everybody being more informed about the trailblazing people that have been before us, right? Knowing our community. So also, in addition to being an artist and a visual storyteller, you're a great educator. So what conversations do you hope to inspire in students and youth?
Yeah. So yeah, again, it's just wanting them to recognize that one day you're gonna be someone's ancestor, and as someone's ancestor, it's like I really want people to think about, how is your descendants gonna be proud of you? Is your future self gonna be proud of you? What are you doing to for them to be proud of you? And strive to do even greater. We have no excuse to be the best versions of ourselves. And really, I just want people to think about that and contemplate that. This piece called "Dance for Her Pride." I know I'm not supposed to have one of my favorite art pieces, because art is like your children, but really and truly, your parents know who's their favorite child. You know what I mean? Like their preferred child, like the one that they'll call upon when they need certain things. And I'm speaking about that as the youngest child. I'm the baby in my family. But this is one of my favorite go-to pieces, only because it was one of the fastest pieces I made, but one of the most jarring pieces, mainly because I think about my grandma. Like I made this for my grandma, and Dance for Her Pride, this art piece is about just the most vulnerable in our community feeling free, right? Which is the elderly women. And I was, my grandma, she's of Baptist descent, not Baptist descent, but she's a Baptist, and so they get into the spirit, they, they get into the African dance and everything, when they're in the spirit, and I remember she did that. She got into the spirit at one of my events, and I was like, yo, but she was so embarrassed about it. And I was like, yo, ideal society is when African elderly women can feel safe and comfortable to dance in the public, to do their thing, and so when I think about freedom and justice, it's like until, the elderly, the most vulnerable in our communities are taken care of, then we're all kind of still like, still need to figure it out, because I feel like that would trickle down to then the younger women, and then that would trickle down onto the children, et cetera, et cetera, so this piece, Dance for Her Pride, is really a piece about freedom and justice for all women, really, and how they're the lioness of our society, and the baobab tree of our society. So again, me just connecting all these ideas, and my artwork as an educator is meant to teach. I embed all these ideas because I want people to be like, yo, why did he put the African freedom and justice art from Ghana in this art piece, And it's like, okay, I hope that you can look it up, like or do a Google image search and be like, okay, what is that thing that you put in this art piece? And they're like, oh, snap, like, like there's history behind this. And how does that history relate to today, And so, yeah, so that's kind of like what my aim is with this work.
Okay, and I can see with your pieces, it looks like you use a lot of different elements and like a lot of different mediums. What's the process behind that? Do you have like kind of like a little formula, or is it once, do you move off of emotion? Once you feel something, do you then look for different cultural pieces to build together? How does that work for you?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely will say I'm blessed with just being inspired all the time, and this is why I work within the digital realm, because I just get ideas, and so whenever I get ideas, I meditate on it first, and so because there's so many ideas, I meditate on what in my spirit I feel like is needed to be told right now, or need to be shared right now. And then that's kind of how I picked the idea. And art is all problem solving, really. Being an artist is all problem solving. So once you have an idea, you will need to figure out how are you going to execute your idea, and then how you're going to get it to look in a way that you're happy with, And um, so there's never a formula, And I think once you start creating formulas, your art kind of dies, And I know there's a lot of people who disagree with me, but one of the all the European artists that you consider to be great, they took their formula and expanded their formula. Like Michelangelo, first painting ain't gonna look like his painting what he made when he last died. His Sistine Chapel doesn't look the same as the Mona Lisa. In fact, he thought the Mona Lisa was trash. So one of the things my grandfather often said to me is like, if you're not growing, then you're dead. And so I'm constantly looking to make my work keep growing and my artistic practice grow. So there's no formula, to say the least. I'm constantly learning new programs, constantly learning how to express my ideas differently, but then I'm also constantly being inspired to create new things.
Okay, and how do you hope the artists of the future will take the next steps in art and activism? What do you hope the future for art itself looks like, especially in your community,
Yeah, ooh, that's a big question. I mean, my hope would be mainly for artists not to think about art for art's sake, and think about how does their work operate within the ecosystem of society. So it's like, I personally think artists are responsible and should take accountability for the things they put out into the ether. And so it's like, when you put that out, be intentional with it, and be mindful with it, And again, if you're thinking about yourself as an ancestor, you have no choice but to be thinking about yourself in that manner, because once you recognize yourself as an ancestor, you now realize you are accountable for those who come after you, And in Indigenous thinking, they speak about 7 generations, 7 generations before you and 7 generations after you, and how your actions and the things you do have a ripple effect, how it affects those who came before you and how it affects those who come after you. And so I would like to see artists take that same mindset and apply it to the work. And the reason why I say that, because it will elevate the quality of your work that you created. I would like to see more Black artists just create high caliber work, and work that blows things out of the water. Unfortunately, I see on social media a lot of people create things just for hype, and create things just for the moment, and or just create things just for the sake of creating things. Like I'm right now doing NFTs, and I'm seeing that, like, non-fungible token, which is like crypto art and stuff like that. I'm seeing that happen where people are just putting things out there and not really thinking about the implications and how people will see that and take it and receive it, and I think I would like to see in my neighborhood, in Etobicoke, artists just really elevating their craft and really just elevating humanity, because that's what art is about.
Okay, I can appreciate that. I'm just going to slowly transition us over to a couple of questions, because I see that everybody's been very captivated by the conversation, the discussion. They're captivated by your pieces. So the first question I have over here is, mentorship seems to have played a strong role in your development as an artist. It can be hard to find that connection for people in the earlier stages of their career. Do you have any suggestions based on your experience?
Mentorship. Listen, there is no success in life without mentorship. I'm gonna say that again. There is no success in life without mentorship. You can argue with me as much as you want. I've traveled to so many different places in the world. I've met a lot of successful people. I've sat down with the ministers of cultures in different countries, sat down with kings and royalty in different parts of the world. Like when I went to Dubai and when I went to Africa, South Africa, and I don't want to say Africa as a continent because it's not a country. So when I went to South Africa and when I went to Zimbabwe and when I went to Ghana, and also to Egypt. Just met some really wealthy people, and all of them will tell you that they didn't get their idea from out of nowhere. Like, you know what I mean? Like, they didn't get to their where they're at with out of by themselves. Like, you know what I mean? Like, guidance is so important, and also recognizing that you don't know everything is so important. So I say all that to say, if you are interested in anything, if you're passionate about anything, if there's anything that you like to do that gets your heart moving, look up other people who are doing it and reach out to them. Right now is a really interesting time because we have social media, and on social media you have access to so many people, you know. Just inbox, DM someone, or just contact them, you know what I mean? If it's tweet, if it's Instagram, whatever, you know what I mean? Just reach out, and just ask questions. Mentorship doesn't have to be a lifelong relationship. It doesn't have to be something that's long term. It can just be simple as someone giving you insight. Another thing is just humbling yourself, you know, and that's where you really grow. I think of water and planting, and I think of water and plants, and I love using tree analogies. And the thing is, like, a seed can't grow unless it loosens its shell. You know, when any seed, most seeds, they come out hard. You know what I mean? And once they identify there's water, it then has to decide: am I going to open up to let this water in, or am I going to stay closed? If you stay closed, it's not going to grow. If it opens up, then you get an oak tree. Then you get some baobab tree. You get a huge tree. And the thing is, mentorship is that water for you. And you can only get that mentorship if you ask questions to different people. And don't put all your hopes in asking one person. Ask multiple people. So that requires you to do research and to just be open and be humble. And another thing, aspect of mentorship is maybe just getting an opinion from someone, you know? Getting an opinion from someone is another form of mentorship. And just be ready for someone to tell you if your work is crap, but don't take it to heart. I remember my first paintings, my teacher was just like, yo, this is trash. And I was like, really? All right, well, then how can I make it better? Because I spent all night on this, but I'm not getting my feelings about it, you know? Because like I said, Michelangelo thought, everyone thought the Mona Lisa was trash, you know? The Mona Lisa was not considered a good painting. Now it's one of the most famous paintings in the world, and one of the most expensive. So you never know what's going to reach people. So it's really just being open to keep growing and to keep on building yourself.
Okay, thank you for that. Yes, you did answer the question. So thank you for that. I know that's going to be very helpful. So another question is, what advice would you give to at-risk youths who feel like there's no future for them?
Sorry, and I keep saying, someone just DM'd me. I keep saying Michelangelo painted Mona Lisa. It's Leonardo da Vinci. I'm sorry.
No problem.
The advice that I'll give to at-risk youth is, that's a hard one because there's so many different scenarios, but I would say just follow your passion. Learn to identify your passion and follow it, and don't follow friends. Like, you know what I mean? Like, because the thing is, like, your friends are great, but not your friends are not going to always be passionate about what you're passionate about. And it's cool that y'all can all like link up and da-da-da-da-da, but at a certain point, you're going to have to choose your path, you know what I mean? And your true friends are the ones who are going to support that path. And so I would say, like, just learn to follow your passion. Because especially like when you get friends who are the supportive friends, like the friends who ride for you no matter what, those are the keepers. But like, you can't depend on that friendship, you know what I mean? Because the greatest friendship is the one that you have with your life, you know what I mean, and the direction that your life is going. So I'll say all that to say, that is where your loyalty should lie, and those who complement that loyalty is the ones that you want to be in your circle. I know that's easier said than done, because when you're young, and I know I'm speaking because like I'm an old man, but like, I know you want to have fun, but the greatest fun you're gonna have is when you're following your passion, because then it doesn't feel like what you're doing is hard. When you feel like then it doesn't feel like what you're doing and what you're striving to do is a task. You know what I mean? Like and this is also why I could never not be an artist, because I don't feel like I'm doing work. Like when I was told how much I get paid to do this monument, I was like, fams, I woke up like 6 a.m. in the morning and made this in 3 hours. What are you telling me? I was like, yo, if you gave me a couple more hours, if you like this, just give me like 6 hours, and I imagine the monuments I would make. You know, so so just to give context to the Joshua Glover piece, like I woke up, made the piece, and then I thought the piece was trash. I thought the piece was like, you know what I mean? I was like, yo, no, that's not it. So I made 3 other versions of the thing just for them to pick the first one.
What was the difference?
By the time,
what did you change? What did you change?
Oh man, like I did like where it's just his bus, and then he's sitting on books. Then I did one where it's like more like abstract type of thing. Then I did all these different things just for them to pick the first one that took me the least amount of time. And when I told you that joy that I felt to be validated, I was like, yo, like that joy I could never have if I'm like chilling with my friends, you know what I mean? Like, and the thing is, like, my friends called me up, like, yo, cute, they were so happy for me, you know what I mean? And that what made it more of a celebration, because they were all like, they felt like my win was their win, you know? And I was like, yo, these are the friends I need, you know, these are the friends I want to continue to have around me in my circle. Because then there was those who were just like, yo, Q, man, you working on the monument, man. You don't even call me, you don't text me, you don't DM me, you don't send me no funny memes. And I'm like, yo.
No, it's important to have people friends who support your future, you know, support each other, as opposed to people who are just there for entertainment, you know, because you're doing something that's very important, and you've become a part of history within your own community. So definitely congratulations on that. But we do have, this question is actually, I think is really interesting. Someone would like to know, what's your opinion about the link between the Indigenous experience and the Black experiences? As a Black person, they feel that there are a lot of common experiences. So how do you feel about that?
Yeah, so if you, at the root of it, they're one and the same people. And I'm speaking beyond race. I'm speaking about spiritually. So the biggest commonality is, again, if you go back to my definition of Afrofuturism, it's caring about the earth. It's caring about land. This is why we do a land acknowledgement in Canada. You know? And you know, some Indigenous groups will say it shouldn't be called a land acknowledgement, it should be called a territory acknowledgement, right? And now, currently, it's recognizing as both, you know, because it's like, when you speak to Indigenous elders, as I have, they will tell you, like, all my relations means that I don't own this land. The land is going to be here before me and after me. I can't claim it, but we were stewards of it, you know. And then if you go to anywhere, where is this same thinking, you realize that a lot of things is connected back to land, right? And so colonization was not about people. It was about land. It was about resources, right? The colonization of Jamaica was not about bringing African people there and wiping out the airwax. It was about bringing African people there so they can work for the Europeans. And then the colonization that continues in Jamaica is the extraction of bauxite from the land. It's the extraction of sugar to make rum and to make all these different things. So the overlap is the caring for the land, right? And the thing is, like, we are moving in a scary place in society where we don't think about our connection to land as much, which I don't want to go down that rabbit hole, but like, we need to also just recognize that, like, we need to care for our environment and then those who are in our environment, right? So again, Indigenous people speak about all our relations, right? And so that is land, that is nature, that is everything. That's there's that unity, you know. And one can say Indigenous practices is Raster Futurism, you know. I won't go that far to say that, because, like, you know, I don't want to take away from one culture to add to another livelihood. But in almost every single, I mean, I don't know every African practice on the continent, obviously, because the continent is huge and there's so many different ethnic groups. But in a lot of the major ones that we are aware of in the West here, I can guarantee you that in every single one of the practices, they have deities that are related to nature. I promise you that. In Yoruba culture, in the Igbo culture, in Ashanti, you know what I mean? In every single one, there's some type of connection where there's reverence for the spiritual energy within nature, which sustains us. There's no future without the natural world, right? Which is why we have the term supernatural. So now I would say that is the commonality. Like the commonality is the observation of the natural being tapped into the supernatural, which then sustains us. I know that's a long-winded answer. But...
No, it was a good answer. Thank you for that. We have another question. Someone would like to know, from your presentation, it's understood that your focus is more on Africa. They'd like to know, why did you focus on Africa and why Sankofo?
So for me, just coming again from being of Jamaican descent, I grew up with someone named Dennis Brown in my household, which is a reggae artist. And my grandfather loved Dennis Brown. And in fact, my grandfather gave me like a whole bunch of sweaters, Coogee sweaters. And the Coogee sweaters are like quilted sweaters that come from Australia. And he also gave me tundra sweaters, which come from Canada. But essentially, he collected these sweaters in the 70s, 80s, and 90s because it reminded him of kente cloths and of African fabrics. And for him, it was like his way of like reclaiming his Africanness. And so Dennis Brown always bigs up Africa. And he has this interview, and I love it. He goes, Africa, Africa. It's like you call me Nia, man. You know, and it's like this whole identity of like just being connected to roots, right? And so I'm giving you that background story to say like I was just raised to recognize that the West is not where my roots is buried or where my roots is from, right? My roots is on the continent. But by connecting to my roots, I'm now tapping into a higher energy and into a higher purpose that's beyond capitalism, that's beyond all the things that the West forces on us. And so my focus on Afrofuturism and focus on Africa is really, again, just raising that consciousness and awareness of how we can be the best versions of ourselves in this lifetime, which is, again, connecting to a higher calling or a higher source, which is whatever your roots is. And the thing is, a lot of Europeans, like when it comes to racism and anti-blackness, like the first thing I say is like, yo, it's not racism, it's ignorance. And the reason why I say that, because almost everything in the world came from Africa in some sort of form, because that is where humanity is. Scientific proven, don't get mad at me, scientifically proven that we came from Africa and then we migrated from Africa, right? And all these civilizations came from Africa. And so the ignorance of Europeans is they think that they just magically popped up in Greece and Rome out of nowhere, and that their culture was just completely unique to itself. They're just like, poof, oh, the Vikings, this is us, like, you know. And the idea that they have is like, yo, they kind of like the world centers around them, you know. And it's like, yo, fams, when Greece and Rome was at its height, Africa and many, like thousands of kingdoms were already not even touching their prime yet. Thousands of years prior to them, like ancient, like the highest, the top dynasty of Kemet, or not even, let's not even talk about Kemet, of Nubia, or not even, let's just say Ethiopia, let's Abyssinia. Like, and again, if you're Christian, look in the Bible, you'll see it. If you're Islamic, you can look in the Bible, you can see it. Like, they were thousands of years ahead of everyone else. Like, when the Greeks and Romans hit their prime, Like these folks didn't even come down from their prime until the medieval times. And the medieval times, which is the Dark Ages, is when Europe was just warring and killing off each other and still trying to figure out what they're doing with their lives. Mm-hmm. So that ignorance that I'm speaking about is just recognizing that like there's so much spiritual knowledge of harmony that we can learn from African ancient wisdom that I feel like needs to be reclaimed, right? Because right now I believe that we're trying to move the world closer to a place of peace. Mm-hmm. And that can only come from recognizing all my relations, as Indigenous folks will say. And also another interesting word about Indigenous is that within Indigenous Futurism, it's not only referring to Western, like Indigenous people here in the West of North America and South America. It's recognizing Indigenous people everywhere, right? And so it's interesting that term is used. I know I'm going down a rabbit hole. Sorry if I'm going on tangents, but that term is used for everyone who's not European, right? So there's something to look into that, right? Like how come people of European descent can't use the term Indigenous, but people in Africa can use it, people in Australia can use it, people in Polynesia can use it, people in South America, Central America, etc. So, and it's because, again, if they look further back in the history, they look at who was the first kings and queens of England, fams, you're going to be surprised. If you look at the first kings and queens of Persia, you're going to be surprised. When you look at what the early Greeks and Romans looked like, you're going to be shocked that you are a descendant of an African. And so, again, my focus on Africa is just celebrating our unity, our connection as human beings. And that is often rooted within African ideology.
Okay. I see a comment from one of our attendees over here, and Joel says that celebrating Black heritage and Black culture is more unique in art. As BIPOC, we are expected to relate and connect to all my relations, and those ones are kind of in quotations, as we get to understand our footage. It also helps us to gather pieces of the puzzle that helps build our culture and life. So thank you for that, Joel. I will move on to another question. Someone would like to know if you're selling the 3D miniature sculpture you have for Joshua Glover.
I am not. That is being passed down to my grandchildren, so no.
Yeah. That's something good to
Great
pass
question,
on.
though.
Something to keep.
I did have bids.
Oh, you have bids.
Sorry?
You have bids. It's a very monumental piece, so I understand why people would fight for it. Okay, we have another question. Someone wants to know, when they interact with your pieces, should they be looking for ways to decode it in addition to enjoying it aesthetically?
I mean, I would say it's up to you. It's really up to you. Art is subjective. There are obvious things that I would put into my work that because for me, I can't take off my educator hat. Like it's just the term that I use is artography, right? So it looks at how one can be an artist, researcher, and teacher simultaneously. And so I love that term because I'm like, oh my gosh, it describes me, because it's like the greatest way to learn is to teach, and the greatest way to teach is to learn, right? So they're not separate. This is why you do tests. This is why a teacher will ask you to explain your answer, elaborate, write essays, because you're also teaching as you learn, and you prove what you learn by teaching. And so I forgot what the question was.
The question is, should they be trying to decode your art?
So yes. So I will say it's not a must, but it's gonna happen regardless, because no matter who you are and what your walk in life is, you're gonna see things from your perspective, and that's okay. And you're meant to do that because that's how you form constructivism, right? That's kind of how you construct meaning, by understanding things from your perspective. So like, I'm gonna go back to my Joshua Glover piece. Actually, I'll show this piece. So if I show this art piece to an engineer, to architect,
Okay, thank you for that. So unfortunately, we've run out of time, guys. So I'm not able to get to any more questions or any more messages, but thank all of you for your attendance and your participation, not only in today's fireside chat, but thank you to everybody who was able to attend the previous chats as well. Thank you, Quentin, for your participation and your conversation today. You definitely taught a lot. You gave a lot of really good information. So thank you for that. Just to let everybody know, these chats are recorded and they will be available on the YouTube page. That will be linked in the chat. So definitely feel free to go and take a look at that whenever, go and take a look at that kind of before the chat disappears. There's also a feedback form because we'd love to receive everybody's feedback on the event. You know, let us know if this is something that they should continue, should it go on, and how you felt about it. Again, thank you, Quentin, for your help today, and thank everybody for their participation. Okay, everybody stay safe and enjoy the rest of your night.